Well, I thank you all for being here this morning. Again, my apologies for coming in a little minute late. I was in the other group session, but I'm going to go ahead and get started, just give you a little brief introduction of myself. My name is Gabby Graham. I am a 4th grade dual language teacher at East Point Elementary. This is going to be my 2nd full year as a blended teacher. And so the focus of today's presentation is going to be on small group instruction. I know that Ms. Smallwood had said in order to kind of minimize the lagging of the Google Meets, you can turn your camera off. So if it starts to get kind of slow, just turn your camera off. I would really appreciate any input, any feedback that you would like to offer. I'm going to be open to that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start presenting my screen for you, and I will get started with the presentation. And here we go. If you'll just let me know, Ms. Rodriguez, when it is up.
It's loading right now.
Loading? Okay, perfect.
Okay, it's there.
All right, perfect. So again, welcome. This is my session, Winning with Small Groups. We're looking at understanding how to reach each student in a blended classroom. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see my name there as well as my email address. If you would like to contact me at any time, please do with any questions, any references that you need, you can definitely email me there. I'm going to exit real quick, and I should have done this at the beginning, but what I'm going to do is in the chat box, I'm going to put the bit.ly link to this slide presentation. You are more than welcome to save it if you want to open it right now and kind of follow along, whatever you feel is going to help you. But I did just want to offer that to you. So you'll see there in the chat box, it is there. Okay. All right, let me get back to our presentation here. So I'm going to start right here with the quote. I like to start things off with things that are meaningful and powerful. And it says, "There's nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequals," by Thomas Jefferson. I think this quote really rings true to what blended learning really represents in regard to fostering a classroom that represents differentiation and individualization, personalization, just like what Ms. Catlin Tucker was talking about. Small group instruction really is an example of what those 3 encompass. So I'm going to go over those 3 for you right now. So what's the difference? A lot of times when we're doing the blended learning, we question ourselves as to, well, I know what differentiation is, but what does it mean to be individualized and personalized? This document here I got from Department of Ed, and it's the Ed Tech department. And so if we look at individualization, basically what it is, it starts with the need of the learner. And then the teacher then customizes tasks for that child. What is it that they need to grow their skills? What is it they need to attain the concepts? Differentiation, which I know we've all been familiar with and have all utilized in our classroom. It starts with the group of learners, and then the teacher will then adapt the instruction based on their needs. So it's like when you're doing a whole group lesson, and then once they break off, you're going to adapt the instruction in case the child needs a reteach or more explanation. The personalization of instruction really connects with the interests of the learner and the students having the voice in their learning. This is where you can get to know the kids as far as what do they like. This is like those introduction surveys you do at the beginning of the year. What's your favorite sport? What's your favorite animal? What do you like to do on the weekends? This is where you can really personalize activities for them in order to reach them, and then they grow as a learner. So looking at my experience again, this upcoming school year is going to be my full 2nd year as a blended teacher. I did start out implementing the blended model in math, and then I moved on to integrating my reading block as well. I saw that I was doing guided reading anyway, so I kind of made it a blended experience for both contents. A lot of time does go into the planning process. That is one of the biggest things that we have to deal with, is being able to plan according to not only your whole class, but individual students. But it's very, very successful if it's planned out properly. I'm going to let you know that don't try to do too much at one time. It can be very overwhelming. But if you plan little by little, you'll start to see the growth and the success in your classroom. So here's some common questions I'm going to go over when it comes to the small group instruction. And I think one of the biggest one, especially that I had, was how do I establish my small groups? How do I build the groupings? How do I make sure that I'm getting the right kiddos? So one of the things that I really encourage is from day one to set those expectations. Let the kids know what you expect from them as far as behavior, timing, transitions, cooperation, what you expect for them when they're coming to small group. I know a lot of us, and you all can agree, when you're working at a small group, you don't want kids to interrupt you. You don't want kids to come in and say, Miss, he took my pencil, or Miss, I can't find an eraser. I got to go to the bathroom. So letting the kids know from day one what you expect from them is going to really help your grouping go smoothly. You'll see right here on the screen, I have like a little poster with the senior expectations. You can just have posted in the class. The middle image are instructions that I usually leave for my tech center, the technology center, so that kids don't come to me and say, hey, Ms. Graham, how do I log into Flipgrid? How do I do a podcast? So that's there for them. And then on the right is probably my favorite poster I have in my class of letting the kids know, when can you interrupt me? There's only certain reasons why I should be interrupted in small group. The way I do a lot of my groupings with the kiddos is I do it with pre-assessments. So on the top right, you'll see this is STEM Scopes Math. Now, as far as my understanding, I don't think every campus has the math portion of STEM Scopes. I'm not 100% sure. But if you do have it at your campus, STEM Scopes offers really great assessments. So you'll see right here, depending on the TEK that you're going to be teaching, I chose right here 4.4E division models. On the little tabs, see, they look just like the STEM Scope Science. Under Evaluate, you have star-based assessments. And I really like that because it gives you an overall look at how the kids are doing, and it breaks it down into the TEKs. So they'll give maybe like 10 questions or so on different parts of like division TEKs or whatever TEK you choose, and you're able to see where the kid stands. It'll group them also according to score, so it helps you make your groups. Another resource you can use I have down here, it's called Savas. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Savas Realize. Was previously known as Pearson Realize. Those are all our Envision math books and the Pearson science books that we had. If you go into the Savas Realize, which you can get in through Clever, I chose right here my Envision Math Grade 4. When you pick a topic, for example, right here, division as well, it'll give you different opportunities to look at worksheets, center games, online assignments, writing assignments. Well, there's always going to be an assessment on that topic. So what I chose was to choose an assessment, assign it to the kids. And what I love about it is you can assign through Google Classroom. The kids will work on it individually, and then you'll get those results automatically based on how they did in that performance. So that really helps out in grouping your students and seeing, are they ready for this unit? Can they move on? Or do I need to kind of take a step back and reteach them? Another thing we do is we take unit assessments from TEKS Resource Center. It's there for us to use. So we'll look and we'll see, okay, how is the questioning? How are they building upon the skills that the student needs to learn? You can also do previously released STAR tests as well. Take stuff like that, put it into an assessment, and check your student's progress or their understanding of a concept. Another thing that my grade level did, I'm sure a lot of grade levels do this, but teacher-created assessments. You can take the TEKS resource, you can take previously STAR tests, and kind of reword or manipulate the questions in a way that you know your students can understand. One of the things that I like to do was when I was building those questions was to use the students' names and their interest in the questions. For example, like right here, it'll say, Melanie has been planting cilantro and jalapenos in her garden. I knew for a fact that Melanie loved those two vegetables. So I made that question for her because it was a little bit of that personalization for her. And it also, got them more interested because they saw their name on the test. When I would do pre-tests, just depending on how I did it, whatever format I chose, I would like to document the grades that they got, usually like in an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, and group them. So I did block out the students' names here, but you'll see how the students' scores are from lowest to highest in order. So then I would say, okay, I'm going to take these first 4 kiddos and put them in a group 1. These next group of kiddos are kind of in the same range. I'll put them in a second group. My third group could be based off of these kids, because you can see right here, all these 5 students got the same score. And then my last grouping would be those top 3 kiddos. So that's an easy way for you to group your students without having to actually physically write down their scores. When I was doing small groups in the classroom, I always had this posted. I always put the students' groups, their names, and at the top, what they needed to have prepared when they came with me. You know, if it was a workbook or a sheet or manipulatives or their laptop, whatever it was, they would come with me. And I would insert down here a timer. And I think this is great to have because while the kids are working, they see a countdown and they don't have to interrupt you with how much time is left or what time is it? How much more time do we have? And then I didn't have to be interrupted with telling them how much time they had. The screen was already playing. Now I just have a projector in my classroom, so it's projected up there for them to see. It was a great, great tool to use. This is an example of what I would send my students during the week. On Google Classroom, the students knew that they had their schedule for the week. It could change, of course, depending on any interruptions we may have, any changes in scheduling. But if you look up here, it says, because I scored approaches for the Unit 10 pretest, I need to practice and review angle measures. So these particular students who got this schedule knew they were at the approaches in regard to their score, and they needed to practice more. So on Monday, they never had to ask me, Miss Graham, where do I go? Or what do I do for math centers? It was there for them. They knew what they had to do Monday for the first 20 minutes. And then once that timer went off, they switched to the second activity. So this group would meet with me on this day. And then Tuesday, they'd go on to math. They would have menu choices, as you can see, like on Wednesday, Thursday review, Friday testing, or whatever it is that you have for them. So it was easy for me to stay organized with my small groups, and it was easy for the kids also to already be prepared. And you could see how they would tell each other, like, hey, check your schedule, or don't forget, today we need our textbook with Miss Graham. So it's real easy. This is another schedule as well, but this is for the group that were at the master's level. So it says, because I mastered the Unit 9 pretest, I'm able to move on to Unit 10. I get a lot of questions with teachers asking, what do you do with those students who have already mastered the unit, or they already know the concepts and you don't want to bore them with the same regurgitation of information. So what I would do is I'd move them on to the next unit, and they got a head start. And I know for those kids, I had a few of them this past year, they had so much confidence and they just really felt like they were, I don't want to say special, but they had that confidence to move on and knowing, I've got that previous unit. I've already got it. I can move on. Now, when they came to me for a small group, I would just kind of do a check for understanding, just to make sure, okay, I know you mastered the pretest, but let's look at some of the questions again and make sure you're really understanding the process. So they'd have the same menu and everything. They did have a little bit more choice in what they could do because they were already at the master's level. Okay. So now it's your turn. I want you to look at this little meme here. I'm sure you've seen it. It's probably one of my favorites. What teachers do when they see a student coming to interrupt small groups. So I want to ask, how does this picture relate to the topic that I just covered? Or what strategy do you use to set up your small groups? If you'd like, you can raise your hand and speak out, or if you want to type in the chat box, that'd be great. I'm going to kind of get out of here real quick. I do see some questions as far as, are the assessments available for pre-K? Miss Kloss, I'm not 100% sure as far as pre-K, but what I can do, I'm going to write your name down here. I'm going to ask a colleague of mine and see if they can give me any answers or any information for that. You're welcome. You're welcome. Joanne Carter, Ms. Carter says, set expectations about when they can or cannot interrupt. Yeah, that's I think one of the hardest things to do, especially with the little ones, to have them come up and miss, this and that. So that's great. That's great. Anybody else have anything they want to add or? Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next part of our learning. Here we go. Okay, so the next question that we do come upon is, how do I find time for small groups? How do I get time to be able to meet with them and see them? I mean, there's never enough time, right? So this is what I do. We have our math framework set up by the district, of course, and I just put in a little pie chart here. So what I usually do is, of course, start with Lone Star Math, target the question. Those are about 10 minutes, más o menos, for each one. And then I go into a mini lesson. The mini lesson usually takes anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. And that is your whole group lesson. That's when you have all the kids in front of you, whether at the carpet or at their desks, of course, and you're giving that tier 1 instruction. And you're really trying to hit them with the concept. Then we move on to the guided groups. So during that guided group time, which is about 40 to 45 minutes, just depending on your day. Of course, we can never set a set time. That's when I would break off into the student groups. And of course, afterwards, we do a little quick 5-minute wrap up. So here's your turn. Again, I know that was a quick one, but it says, look at all the free time I have, said no teacher ever, of course. What are your thoughts on how to effectively use your math time for small group instruction? How can you use your math time to meet with your small groups? If you have something different that you're already doing and you're willing to share that out or put it in the chat box, I'd appreciate that. I'm going to go back real quick and show you again. It's during the guided group time, about the 40 to 45 minutes that we have for the small group instruction. So I'm going to exit out again. I'm going to go back to the meet session. Thank you, Ms. Williams. I see that. Setting expectations, what they do if they need assistance. Yes, perfect. So how do you use your time? Yes, thank you, Ms. Delgado. It says it can work in math. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just how it does with the guided reading. Perfect. Okay. Give about another minute or so, just in case anybody wants to chime in with how they use their time for small group or any thoughts you may have. Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Tapia. Using a timer to remind you. Yes, I think that's one of the most important things that's helped me a lot is having that timer so you're not rushing, but then you're also not lagging behind. Perfect, perfect. Let's see what else we have here. Ms. Olivares, consistency. Yes, that is a struggle. It definitely can be a struggle to be consistent with what you're doing because you're going to have those interruptions, right? You're going to have things that come into your day. Ms. Mendoza, thank you. Routines established and consistent. Yes, perfect. Making sure those routines are set in place. And I do think, right now going into the digital remote learning, it's going to be a big difference in setting those rotations. Okay, Ms. Delgado, station rotation and independent work time is when teachers can give groups of students that guidance and interventions. Time on task for kids means less interruptions in small groups. They learn to be independent. Perfect. I love those. Yes. Perfect. The interventions, especially for those kiddos that need it. Thank you all so much for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and get back to the presentation here. All right. So here's the next question that comes up. What do I do once my group is with me? It's kind of like, all right, the kids are with me. They're sitting in front of me. They got their stuff. What do I do? So it's like the guided reading, of course. You're going to be tailoring what the kids need with your instruction. So right here I have, these are a few pictures of my kiddos from the years past of us working. And the first thing that I look at is this is your time to work closely with the students. Provide them that instruction that helps them to build upon the skills or the concept you're teaching. Reteach concepts if necessary. Just because you have 4 or 5 kiddos in front of you doesn't mean you have to work with all 4 at one time. You can work one-on-one with one of the students, and while the others are kind of working as a little small group on a particular task. Just like in the guided reading, you have them read one at a time. You can do the same thing with math. Another thing that we're doing in small group is you're checking for understanding. You're addressing any gaps in the concept that the student needs, anything that they're lacking. So you can use manipulatives, worksheets, have them bring their textbook, get some games, whatever it is that you need there at your center table, and just to see, okay, are they understanding what they need? How can I help them? The third part here I have here is it encourages collaboration among the group. It helps them to understand teamwork and to work together, because a lot of times your groupings are going to change. They may not be the same week to week. They may even change in the middle of the week if a student has mastered a skill. So they learn to work with their peers and other students in their classroom, of course. And then us as a teacher, we can observe the learning styles of the student. We can learn to see, okay, are they more tactile? Are they more visual? Do they like to write a lot? Are they, they don't want to speak too much. This really helps us to get to learn who our students are. When meeting with small groups or even with your individual students, because a lot of times during that guided math part, I would do one-on-one with the kiddos. This allows you to have follow-ups on their goal setting. When it comes to blended learning, of course, goal setting is one of the things that really helps to get the kids on track of where they are and where they need to be. This image on the top right here, I made these for my kiddos. I think a lot of us at our campus use them to help the kids see where they stood and where they need to be. So they would just input their previous year math score. Of course, I'm 4th grade, so I'm a tested grade level, but I'm sure in the lower grades, I know Ms. Kloss, you asked about pre-K, so I'm going to help you out with that. But in the lower grades that are not tested, you could even do reading level. You can do how they did on a math test or a math assignment and look and see have they shown any growth throughout the 9 weeks. They can do learning habits, because not all goals have to be academic. You don't have to set up goals that are just based on grades and scores, right? So right here, what I have is a tracker for learning habits. For example, it says, I worked cooperatively with others. I was helpful and friendly. I followed directions. I attempted each part of my task. So this really helps the student to gain a lot of independence and responsibility, right? It's what we all want for our kiddos. Over here, SMART goals, that's also a little bit different than academic. These can be goals that a student has for themselves. For example, maybe they want to be better at basketball. Maybe they want to make the gymnastics team, or, be better at singing. Whatever it is that they want to do, they make these goals. And in the classroom, I think it's really important to make goals that are non-academic, because it gets the kiddos away from that pressure of grades and numbers. Another thing that we do with the small group is you have conversations about those student goals, and you help them to see where they're at and where they need to be. Right here on the left side, I created a data tracker, digital data tracker that each one of my students had. It was really easy to set up in Google Sheets. I just created a data tracker and I made a copy for all the kiddos. We had the unit test, what their topics were, their scores. They input where they were in 3rd grade, where they need to be. And then on the right side, I put the approaches, meets, and masters. And again, this can be completely changed up for the lower grades, again, depending on what the goals that you have set for your kids. On the right side, these were some pages that I had printed for the kids as well. They had data sheets for all concepts, math, reading, writing, and in their data binders, they wrote down the unit, the date they took it, and they would just kind of shade up where they were. So it was a nice visual for the kids to see where their data was. Now, one of the things I wish I had, not being in the classroom, I don't have any pictures of my kids' work or the walls, because of course, when we all left back in March, we didn't think we were going to be home for 4 months. So I just grabbed what I could, what I had saved on my desktop or my drive. If any of you would like to have copies of the digital tracker or the printable ones as well, feel free to email me and I'll send them to you. They're real easy to print. The data tracker on Google Sheets is easy to manage. I can help you out with that as well if you'd like. So feel free to email me and I will help you out with that. The time here, and I know I have the student here that I have permission with them, of course, is to show that you have time for individual feedback and explaining the student work. So when you're working with these students, you can look at their classwork, kind of like what Miss Catlin Tucker was explaining in the keynote speaking. And she said, this is a time for you to really work with them and see, okay, what is it you did wrong? What did you do correct? And how can we work together to reach your goal? Okay. So I'm going to stop right here real quick again and just give some time to y'all if you have any questions, if you have any comments on as far as working with the students, anything you'd like to share. Come on, it's quiet over here. It's weird talking to myself. If any of you have done these presentations, you know it's very awkward, right? I see Ms. Delgado's like, yes. It's very awkward to talk to yourself. So if anybody wants to speak up or share out any comments, anything that they want to share, please feel free. Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Yes, every campus is going to have STEM Goals Math. That's awesome. That's awesome. Ms. Delgado, thank you so much. It can be very nerve-wracking up here. Any thoughts on extending learning in small groups from Ms. Sloan? Can you kind of extend on that idea? What do you mean about extending learning as far as time, you mean? Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. I appreciate that. Thank you. Here's my email, Ms. Carter, if you like. Oh, okay, so students that have mastered, thank you so much. So Ms. Sloan is asking, how can we help the kiddos that have already mastered the learning? So what I have done is I've moved them on to another unit. For example, if the pre-assessment, here, hold on, I'm gonna stop the presenting just so you can see my face. If they've already mastered a previous unit, the best thing to do is move them on to the next and help them to gain the concepts that's coming up next. I did have a lot of really high achieving students this last year. So even towards like in January, February, they were already working on 5th grade skills. So anything you can do to bump them up. PBL is great. Project-based learning, give them projects because that really helps them to make connections to real world. That's one of the big things that I think my kiddos really gained was making those real world connections through projects. So that's a great thing for them to do. I hope I've answered your question, Ms. Sloan there. Ms. Olivares says, while I'm in small group, I encourage them to help each other, peer tutoring, especially for those that don't get it. Yes, that's amazing. I love that because a lot of times, and I've seen that, Ms. Olivares, where a lot of the kids, they get embarrassed to ask the teacher. They get embarrassed to ask for help. So that's great that they can encourage and help each other. Yes, exactly, Ms. Lopez, what you just said. They get embarrassed. Yeah, it's true. When you focus on them, they won't answer. They're so embarrassed. They're going to pretend they know what they're doing. Let's see. Ms. Agales, there's a session for PBL. Yes, perfect. I did see that one. Awesome. Thank you all so much for your input. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and present back. We've got about maybe 15 more minutes. And Mr. Rodriguez, if you'll help me out and let me know if it's presenting.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so another common question that comes up is, what about the other groups? What do I do with the students that are just kind of walking around? They're not with me. And as my little Bitmoji says, well, when I first started, I don't know. Let's see. So one of the things I created were menus. And on the left side here, you can see these were the menus that I had created for literacy centers, but they were the exact same that I did for math. So the students were were grouped based on their tiers when it came to literacy. But on the math, right here on the right side, you'll see I had all the different menu options they could do. And they knew the yellow, where they had to do those in a week. I mean, granted, we had the perfect week with no interruptions, no absences, nothing, right? They had to do that throughout the week. the blue, where they must do at least one per week, and the green, that was what they may do once everything else was finished. So the menus are really created to help encourage student choice and give them that ability to choose. That's where that personalization comes in, and the individualization, because they're able to choose what they want to do. They can take ownership of what they need to complete, and they have extra options, because you're going to have those early finishers for sure. You're going to have the kids who are high performing and are going to be, well, Ms. Graham, I passed 6 Imagine Math lessons and I finished 3 centers. Okay, we'll move on to the next. And I think that's one of the great things about all the digital resources we have now, all the technology that we have for the kids to be able to choose. So right here, I have just a list of all the things we can access. Of course, through Clever, we have Imagine Math. At Galaxy, we have TeakSpace Center games, and a lot of those you can find either on Teachers Pay Teachers, but you do have to be careful that it is aligning with our Teaks, because I know a lot of them are Common Core, so just be careful with that. Pearson, or now the Savvy, Realize, has a lot of center games that are free. I mean, it's access through the district. Individual assignments, the kids can be working on any individual assignments they have or need to complete, or maybe an assignment to redo. They can work on workbooks, technology centers like Flipgrid, Edpuzzle, Nearpod, maybe some YouTube Teaks review, choice board activities. I love Flipgrid. Flipgrid was my baby this past year, so I really, really encourage my kiddos to use it. So I'm going to show you a quick video on how the students used Flipgrid to do math responses while they were doing their centers. I'm going to open this up here, and this was a student of mine.
Reason 1, a unit fraction is a small part of a whole, like this. 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 is a small part of a whole. Reason 2, the improper and the mixed have the same denominator, like this. Denominator, the same.
So that was how my students were using Flipgrid to be able to give responses to their math during the instruction. Okay. And so just a final reflection, I know we still have about maybe about 10 minutes or so to go, but just looking back at the small group, one of the biggest things, the takeaway that I get from it is student engagement, because when you have that small group with you, of course that group of, whether it's 2 to 6 kids, they're going to be engaged in whatever it is that you're giving to them, right? And then the other kiddos that are working, as you saw, whatever activity they have, they're going to stay engaged. Now, of course, in my first year, it was really kind of a tough role to kind of step back and let the kids choose. But when I started to see just how successful the kids were and actually how responsible they can be with their learning, it was like okay, it was nice. Every kid was working. It was very rare that I saw kids off task. I mean, again, it just depends on your classroom, right? And the dynamic that you have. A second point I made there was the collaboration and the confidence. Again, the kids are collaborating. I know that one of you here typed in that the kids can help each other, like the peer tutoring. That is such a big, important part of the student dynamic as well. The environment of your classroom where they can depend on each other and they know that they can count on one another for help. They build their confidence as well. The personalized instruction, of course, as we've discussed and as Ms. Catlin discussed, giving that instruction that is personalized to the kiddo, things that they like, things that they're interested and they're passionate about. And if you can connect your instruction or an activity or a PBL to them, that's really gonna help them a lot. The data-driven instruction, of course, like I had shown you, just based on pre-assessment or based on any student work, if you're going to give the student an assignment and then you see where they're lacking or where the gaps are, you use that data to drive your instruction, whether it's small group or whole group, right? You are able to identify gaps. Of course, we talked about that to see what the kids are missing. And coming up to this new school year, there's going to be major gaps. I mean, a whole half year of a gap with these kiddos. So we have a lot to really work on and to reflect on how we're going to be able to close those gaps. Professional growth, of course, me as a teacher, I think I've grown a lot in how I teach. You know, I used to be real, still am kind of, have that old school mentality of, I'm the teacher, you listen to me, you don't talk. And I had to really shift that and let the kids be able to take ownership of their learning. And it changed and it helped me a lot. I took a lot of weight off my own shoulders. And of course, it's all about the kids. Everything we're doing with the blended learning, with everything that has to do with the differentiation and the individualization, it's all about the kids and how are we going to help them grow and be successful. So now I'm going to turn it back to you. And what's the takeaway that you have from this session? What is one thing that really either stuck with you, or one thing you want to put into practice, or maybe even something you're already doing and now you want to build upon? So I'm going to turn it back to you. And before we leave, I do want to say thank you again for being here and for listening and participating. I know it's summer and it's still the morning. Some of us are like, we want to be back in our bed, but I do thank you so very much. I'm going to go ahead and stop presenting now. And I'm going to bring it back to you all to see, is there anything you'd like to share? Anything that you want to build upon? What was the takeaway that you have? Let's see, Ms. Delgado said, seeing them able to communicate accurate learning in a confident way is the fruit of our labor. Oh, I love that. Should put that like in a little quote and hang it up in the classroom. That's beautiful. Anything else? Miss Williams, setting expectations, consistency, and making it personalized. Yes, for sure. Miss Sloan, pre-assessment to help with grouping. Yep, that really helps. Miss Triplet, thanks for sharing. It helps. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. You are more than welcome. Miss Smalley, setting expectations day one. Yes. And that's going to be very different, right? This year, how we're going to set those expectations. It's going to have to be virtual expectations, right? Google Meet expectations. It's going to be crazy. Ms. Delgado, kids 7. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Like I said, I'm not an expert at all by any means, but I am very happy to share, and anything I can do to help anybody, of course. STEM Scopes assessments, yes. You all are welcome. Thank you so much again. I had the link of the slides for you. I put in my email address. Is there anything you need, you want to reach out to me, please do. Ms. Tapia, giving the students the ownership of their learning to help them be successful. Yes, of course, Ms. Tapia. Thank you, Angie, so much for being here. Ms. Fernandez, you're going to try Flipgrid with math. Oh, awesome. If you need help with Flipgrid, let me know, please. I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. Well, Ms. Rodriguez, I know we have about 5 minutes left, but that pretty much wraps up the end of my session. If anybody else has anything they want to share, more than willing to, you want to put in the chat box. If not, I guess this wraps it up. Is that okay, Ms. Rodriguez, if we can go ahead and conclude?
Yeah, I just want to remind them about the survey.
Okay.
It won't be open until noon. I was just told right now.
Okay, it's open at noon. Perfect.
Okay. And then the session's been recorded, so you'll be able to see it on the YouTube, and I've attached a link on it also. They're on the chat.
Perfect. Okay. That sounds great. Ms. Rodriguez, thank you so much for monitoring and for helping me out. I really do appreciate it. And for everybody who attended, I appreciate your time and your willingness to learn. I hope you have a great time at the rest of your sessions and have a successful school year.